Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sage 300 2021 virtual event. My name is Peter McManaman, and I am the Sage 300 Practice Manager for MicroChannel. I'm really excited to be here today and extend you a very warm welcome. Sage 300 is such a stable, trusted, and reliable product that is steeped in years of development and is used by businesses all around the globe. We do find, however, that a lot of our clients are using just a small portion of the total range of features available to them, often lamenting the fact that they are not using the system to its full capability. The core Sage 300 product itself is so rich in features with subtle settings and functions that when used correctly can save your business time and money. As part of today's session, we will show you a range of features that can show you how you can enhance your system and make it run like a well-oiled machine. We will also show you how you can easily extend the functionality of Sage 300 using some of the tools that are available. So hopefully today will be a launching pad for you that will open your mind to the full capabilities that lay hidden within Sage 300. We have a star-studded cast today who will be involved in the presentation. We have Bruce Minty, who is the Product Marketing Manager here in Australia for Sage, Alex Kelly, our Partner Manager at Sage and part of the MicroChannel family, our own Stefan Kotzer, heading up our Sage Intacct team, and last but not least, William Woolmer, Sage 300 Senior Consultant, who brings years of experience to our team. So the agenda for today is to firstly cover off some of the awards that MicroChannel have achieved over the past 12 months. These awards are important to demonstrate that we as a business are dedicated to Sage, which invariably is good for you as the customer, so you can understand how committed we are to the products that Sage offer. Then Bruce will go through the road ahead for Sage 300. This is an important element of the session to show you where the product is heading and to go through some of the new features that will be embedded into the future releases of the product. Stefan will then show you another product offering from the Sage family in Sage Intacct, which has full cloud capability for those of you looking towards that, moving into that space in the future. And William will show us how easy it is to extend the functionality of Sage 300 using a product called Orchid Extender, which frankly all Sage 300 users should have. William will also open your eyes to a range of tips and tricks that you may not even know are incorporated into the base product and are available to you now. So sit back and relax, and I will now pass over to Alex from Sage for a few words about the awards.
Yeah, thank you for that, Peter, and a quick good morning to everybody, and thank you for joining us. Just before we get things kicked off, as Peter mentioned, I just wanted to take a few moments to say a quick congratulations to the MicroChannel team. MicroChannel were recently named our top business partner of the year for the 3rd year running, as well as our top Sage 300 partner of the year for close to 10 years running now. So I think that's a huge testament to the fact that you guys are working with the best in the business. And again, look, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone involved in the Sage practice over at MicroChannel, just for all the hard work that they put into supporting you guys as our customers. So moving on, I'll just quickly introduce Bruce Minty again, who's our Product Marketing Manager for all things ERP. And Bruce is going to take us through the road ahead for all things Sage 300. So over to you, Bruce.
Look, thank you for joining us today. Wonderful to have you all on board for this morning session. We've got a pretty action-packed session for you this morning, so let's get right into it. Before we get into the global development roadmap, I just wanted to highlight a very significant regionally led development that has recently been delivered to enhance Sage 300's bank feeds capability, which was initially released in August 2020 for the 2020.2 version release. Next. So as we know, in 2021, we delivered payments acceptance since we last met for the last customer session. And with payments acceptance, you can now accept customer payments through online payment service providers such as PayPal and Stripe. So in version 2021, invoices can display a Pay Now button that allows you to, or allows your customers to click through and pay by invoice using an online provider that you've got set up within your Sage 300 company. And so obviously here, the benefit here is that it delivers a significant cash flow improvement for yourselves and improves your days sales outstanding ratios as well. So that's available in version 2021 for subscription customers. we're delighted with the delivery of bank feeds, as I mentioned earlier. We're delighted now to announce the availability of direct bank feeds to support our New Zealand banking institutions for not only our Sage 300 customers, but also for Sage Intacct and Sage 50 for those customers on a subscription license model. So, as we know, direct bank feeds make it easier and faster to retrieve those transactions from your chosen bank. Then use this transactional data to reconcile with ledgers within your ERP, and this delivers automation within finance, saves you, valuable time in manual data entry, whilst reducing any sort of risk of error as such. Again, it's a subscription-only feature, and obviously our offer to switch to subscription at a like-for-like price for what you'd be paying now under a Perpetual license is an offer that's still active until the 30th of September. So, please reach out to the team here and schedule a time to switch over and take advantage of the offer before it expires, to take advantage of bank feeds, payments acceptance, and other cloud-connected features that we will be delivering within the product in future versions. So just so that you understand, on bank feeds for Australian customers, we use two providers. We partnered with Sysdata and Yodlee. Sys provide a direct bank feed integration with the major banks such as Commonwealth Bank, NAB, Westpac, Bendigo, Macquarie, ANZ, Bank of Melbourne, Bank of Queensland, and many others. And for New Zealand, for our New Zealand customers, we support one provider at this stage, being Yodlee, and they provide online banking data feeds through screen scraping function, and the setup is online with the Sage application, and clients will need to provide login credentials to Yodlee, in this case, through this process with their online bank. So it's generally a good practice to arrange a restricted login for that bank, so that actually only provides read access to that data. And data provided by Yodlee here will be what is available through the online access, and this can include both cleared and uncleared transactions. So, it's effectively, as of 2020.2, I should say, changes were made to the Reconcile OFX statement screen to rename it as the Reconcile E statement screen, and you can use this screen, as you can see, to get those electronic statements in either OFX format or from bank feeds. You simply, click the Connect Bank Feed option, which launches a wizard to connect to a bank account directly, or by a third-party service such as I mentioned, Sys and Yodlee. Next slide, please. So with all that, now we're at the stage where preparations are now underway for the next major release of Sage 300, which will be available here in Australia in September. So there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done within our internal systems to get that enabled, as far as SKU setups and tested and so forth. So with this particular release, it's a major release, and there's a number of new features that you'll see shortly, ranging from UX Finder improvements, enhancements to purchase ordering and order entry. Our financial report writer is now 64-bit, and as well as that, there's been a number of web screen developments across GL and PJC, and thereby, with that, taking another step towards completion of our UI modernization strategy for Sage 300. So firstly, on the web screens, and I'll just get you to click through, there's a couple of items here on the screen here that we'll touch on. So, again, we continue to invest in web screens so that we obviously modernize that user interface, but work towards functional parity within our desktop screens as well. So, we've released many of the PJ transaction UIs, and we'll continue to progress through into the next year with the goal of completing most of the modules across Sage 300 as well. So for 2022, we've got general ledger chart of accounts screens, AR, customer lists as well, and some further screens within project and job costing on the transaction side of things, the opening balance screens, costing screens, material usage, and material returns as well. And further down the line, further PJC screens, you've got material allocation screens now, post-transactions and print transaction listing screens as well within 2022. And finally, to round out the web screen development for this version, we've got a new reminder list screen as well. So again, these new web screens are available for those customers on a subscription license model only, or those that have a subscription addendum to their Perpetual license. And further, as we delve further into 2022, there's been also an improved finder on all of the web screens, which provides a much better user experience. We plan to continue that momentum with improvements to record navigation. So what you'll see are new filtering improvements. So some persistent filtering to help set default searches. We've got additional filtering options to make it far easier to locate those records. You've got show all records, so users can view previous and next records by default, and users can also change the sizing of finders as well. So there's been some other usability improvements to align with more desktop functionality and some improved keyboard accessibility as well. And also with that, there's been some improvements with desktop screens, as you'll see now as well. So as I mentioned, with the next slide, we've updated our GL financial reporter to be now 64-bit to obviously extend the lifetime of this very useful reporting tool that's inherent within 300. And plan to look at how we can bring this functionality into web screens as well. So increased compatibility, but with Excel, so you can use a 32 or 64-bit. But note here, customers can either upgrade to 64-bit Sage Financial Reporter, or leave it as a 32-bit and upgrade it at their own pace in the future as well. So there's some further options. And into the next one. So yeah, some general improvements here you'll see in 2022 around the purchase ordering area within 300. You've got users can also now enter or effectively enter negative additional costs on purchase order credit notes. And there's also the ability to mass update the location or expected date within the order detail lines within purchase orders. And that flows through also into the next slide here, where we carry that feature forward into our order entry, whereby users can also now mass update that location and expected ship date on those lines for order entry. And in the next slide, we'll also look at the reservation of LAN pack user licenses. So now with this, users can, or customers here can now reserve one or several LAN pack user licenses if they're using third-party products integrated with Sage 300. And what this does, it provides, by reserving a LAN pack, it just ensures that constant state and uninterrupted access into the Sage 300 database to overcome any sort of conflict or errors if that would be the case. So another improvement there. And into the next slide, please. Also, what we've done is the ability to embed we've embedded the ability to launch some functions within Sage 300. So in 2022, you can now launch Sage Data and Analytics from Sage 300 within the menu option you're seeing across into the desktop, from the desktop screens, or also from web screens as well. Diagram you're seeing at the bottom right there is the inventory console that comes with Sage Data Analytics. For those that aren't aware of SD&A, it automates effectively the process of collecting data from applications and data sources across a business and integrates them into a common data hub that's always up to date and accurate and secure. It delivers pre-packaged data models, intuitive data modeling, and then enables customers to organize the data for analysis very, very easily. So there's no SQL code required with this, but if you do have the in-house capability to write SQL code, you can use this as well. But effectively, SD&A delivers preset industry best practice analytics, a bunch of calculations and KPIs, so you can instantly analyze your data. and it delivers, pre-packaged role-based dashboards, as you see in an example at the bottom right there, to deliver those visualizations across all your business functions. Lastly, there too, in 2022, we've allowed now third-party applications that can now link and drop their content within Sage 300 help menus too, just to make it easier so you can find that information and resources, not only for information on Sage 300, but those third-party applications. So the ability to hook into that Sage 300 help menu is very, very important for ISVs and obviously users of Sage 300. So from 2022, we look at the road ahead into what comes next in future releases. And so continuing with our release cadence of obviously alternating the decision we made a couple of releases ago to alternate between feature release and defect release, and you'll see that within what you're seeing now. We look towards upcoming releases that again focus on web screen completion across the application. And as you'll see that, so September 2021 is where we sit almost now, where we deliver version 2022.0, and then later on in the year in December we'll deliver a defect release. Further onwards into the January timeframe, we look at some tax updates and updates that relate more or less to USA and Canada. But then into May and in September 22, we see further fit out of our PJC web screens. There's visual process flows for web screens, financial report writer for web screens. There's some further usability enhancements as well. But one point of note to make here is that testing is actually currently underway presently within the development team in North America to test Sage Intacct budgeting and planning, which is the product, a module offering within Sage Intacct to build out that integration with Sage 300 to provide that budgeting and planning capability. This really resonated with business partners in North America, and we'll look at rolling that out here in this region. But it's a solution that's really perfect for those small to mid-sized businesses. A lot of sophistication. There's far easier modeling of calculations when you are budgeting and within your organization. There's the ability to define projected cash flows, projected sales. There's revenue recognition options. You can manage headcount expenses, and it lets you create multiple scenarios by changing drivers and assessing the potential impact of your business using what if analysis tools. So it's a really, really sophisticated budgeting and planning module offering, but it is natively very easy to use at the same time. So this is a really, really exciting development, and we look to roll this integration piece out next year, which is fantastic. So if we just enter down through some of these 3-year priorities, look, every year we continue, as I mentioned, to invest in web screens towards that parity with desktop screens. We're continuing that integration and deeper integration models with other third-party applications, and we take on white label solutions, white label ISV solutions as we can, as we've done so, as you see with SDNA. Further enhancements that you'll see coming through the pipeline to support our ISV ecosystem. Every year we make these continuous improvements to our SDK and API to support the development partners, just to make it faster and easier for them to build those integrations within Sage 300. And we'll continue to seek out new ISV partners and value add to that already extensive ecosystem that we've built. And we work very, very closely at a global level, but also at a regional level with our ISV manager here, Priya Sukesh, along with our product manager, Peter Chu, to deliver an extended ecosystem for our Sage 300 customers to assess. Obviously, there's a commitment to ensure tax compliance and other, regulatory and compliance initiatives that come our way, and we make sure that we deliver on those in a very timely manner as well. But also, with that, obviously there's a focus on delivering to customer requests, and for that there's the ideas portal. and we dedicate a lot of time each release to give customers what they've been looking for. And obviously, recent requests that have been delivered to be delivered in 2022 include the mass update function about location and expected ship date, the order line details for purchasing and order entry. So they're just an example there that we deliver to those customer needs. But please get on board with the ideas portal, enter your requests, vote for those that you feel that are necessary and that you would like to see in the product. And rest assured, those ideas are constantly being monitored by the North American development team. I think that wraps it up for my session. So look, thank you very much. Now I'll hand over to Alex to talk to you a little bit about Sage 300 subscription options. Thanks, Alex.
No, thank you very much, sir. And I guess hello again, everybody. As Bruce mentioned, look, I just wanted to take a couple of moments just to round this section out. It's probably become quite apparent as we've gone through the slides that a lot of the key feature releases going to Sage 300 are going to our subscription line only. So as I said, just want to take a couple of moments to talk you through what's on screen now, which is the options you guys have as a Sage 300 customer. So with option one, first big thing I wanted to call out is that we're not forcing anybody to do anything. So you guys can stay on the exact Perpetual line that you're on today. We're going to continue to release enhancements and I guess updates to that line. The main difference there is that basically you won't be able to access those subscription features that we've gone through in the slides earlier. Now, if you do want to access those features, we do have an offer, like Bruce mentioned, out in market that you can basically leverage. And I'm going to take a moment to talk through that in a second. So that would be option two. Now, if you're looking at option three, then, and you're like a lot of other businesses out there today, and you want to consider a migration to the cloud, then Sage does have a couple of options, I guess, available to you in that regard also. And Stefan from MicroChannel is going to jump on in a second to talk through those. So what is the offer? The offer is that you can migrate your current set of Perpetual licenses across to subscription. You pay nothing at the point of migration, and you continue to pay the same rate annually that you were paying on Perpetual maintenance. So the big differentiator there is that basically at the end of each subscription term, your licenses, they will actually expire. So you'll need to pay that renewal and then basically be provisioned a new set of licenses just to continue to be able to use the software basically. So what's the process? I'd imagine the first step, I'd recommend reaching out to your account manager. They should be across all the details of the T's and C's, and they can really provide you with some guidance around, whether this is, I guess, an option that you could consider and what's going to be required from your side. Once you've had the chance to review everything, your account manager can then reach out to Sage and we'll put together all of the required documentation for you. And then again, once you've had the chance to review that and send it back across, we kick off the conversion process, which is typically about a week's turnaround. Now, what's involved there is that you'll have an outstanding portion of your software maintenance that we will credit, I guess, against the subscription invoice. Now, that results in a $0 transaction, and we will then provision and basically send across the new keys to MicroChannel. Now, there may be an upgrade required in order for you to access some of these things and, I guess, functionalities that we've gone through today, but that's something that you can discuss with your account manager as a part of the first step. So, like as I said, I guess please reach out if there's any sort of further clarification or I guess questions that you'd like me to address at the end of the session today. So please drop them into the Q&A box and then we can address those at the end. So with that, I'm going to hand across to Stefan Kotzer, who's going to take us through option 3, which is basically your cloud native offerings with Sage. So over to you, Matt.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. I think maybe just tagging on to what Peter mentioned during the introduction, that we just want to share a bit of an option for you guys should your company decide it's time to move into the cloud space. Sage Intacct, which is 100% cloud product. And I think the unique thing about that picture on there, that's actually one of our first customers we took on board 2 years ago onto the new product. They started out with 2 companies. They're running now 42 companies on this Sage Intacct cloud product. They're also ASX listed. So what I want to do is just maybe take you guys through exactly what does it mean, Sage Intacct? What is included in the product? Firstly, as I've shared, it's a cloud native solution. It's been written in the cloud from day one. It's a 20-year-old cloud solution. Sage acquired it in 2017, and it's really since that acquisition taking the product to new heights. It has built-in AI and machine learning capability as well, which is pretty heavily focused around about month ends, ensuring that we eliminate that month-end close period. Very strong integration capability via APIs. And obviously it lives in the cloud. You can access it from anywhere. It's also hosted by Sage in Sydney. So your data remains in Australia. And it's on the AWS platform. Well, then there's certain interesting features actually in the product that is all core part of the product. It's not an add-on solution. So when you buy the product, that's what you get. The first thing is a collaboration tool. It's like a chatterbox inside the solution. So if you need to communicate and chat to other users in your accounts department, that's a good tool just to interact instead of always using emails. And that interaction stays with the transactions as well. Obviously, full audit trail capability, and obviously attachments. You can attach documents, master file, wherever you do a transaction. It's standard included in the product as well. But from there, the really powerful aspect of the cloud product is multi. It really loves. It's a good space for it. So if you have multiple companies, different currencies, you need to report in different currencies. This is really a good solution for that. So consolidation becomes a non-event. There's no add-on module for consolidation as such. So it pretty much sits within the same system. You can print your P&L for one company, for 3 companies, AUD, USA is pretty much all inclusive in the solution. Well, then added to that, built into the software is approval workflows as well, standard in the product. If you want, for approvals of those purchase orders or AP invoices. It also have built-in expense management capability for your staff claims. That's also part of the process. And then, as you guys are familiar with Sage 300, there's a lot of add-on products. So the Sage Intacct will also, they call them marketplace partners, which also can add extensively to options for the product. It also has a built-in projects and contracts module that is standard out of the box with also, I think Bruce referred earlier to the budgeting and marketing, or the budgeting and forecasting tool. That's also part of the solution. What really makes it unique is dimensions. So 300, you guys will know it as segments. So they pretty much replace that concept with dimensions, which means your, which means that your natural chart of accounts is very small, and you can just use the dimension functionality then for your cost centers and regions and products to do reporting on. Really a user-friendly report writing tool for your P&L and operational reports. So really don't need to use Excel anymore. And out-of-the-box dashboards that give that view and visibility for the CEO and executive level as well. And everything is real-time. There's no batch processing. When you post a transaction, it is immediately available in the general ledger for observation. So that's it. Just thought I want to share with you guys a bit on that. I'll hand back over to William that's going to showcase a bit of product for you guys.
Good morning all, William Woolmer speaking. So my role today is to go through 2 different areas. One is Extender, discuss what that is, and then look at Sage tips. Orchid Extender is an add-on product which sits within Sage. Is extensive opportunities to expand and reconfigure Sage's screens and fields. It's very flexible and quite simple to manage. It uses scripts to write and create the functions it does. Those scripts are written in an open language called Python, which is not for the faint of heart, but is certainly a very straightforward from a programming language point of view. So it's open and configurable. It gives you a world of opportunity to change and expand Sage, so we'll show you a few of those. I'll go through these 7 points, which I'll run through on a demo now. And you can come back to this slide and look for those if you wish later. As you may be aware, the whole of this presentation is being recorded, so you'll be able to refer to these again. Okay, so the first I'd like to look at is the option to display fields in a grid that are normally hidden away on an optional field. So Sage 300 classic function is the optional fields, where you can add more data into master or detail, but the fields themselves are on an extra pop-up screen. So with Extender, I can actually create a further lines on the detail. So if I look in purchase order entry, here's one we made before. Okay, so in the vendor 1400 for this item, when I go through on the grid, I've got optional fields, which we're used to seeing. So optional fields pop up and they've got finders and I can add values to them. So this is the normal way you may use an optional field. The difference is that with the extended component running here, two of these optional fields, entity and project, have been put into a grid on the detail line. So that's it seems a small thing, but it can actually make a lot of difference when you're keying a lot of data. This is obviously just an example. Purchase orders through any detail grid, this can be done anywhere inside Sage. You can still use the finders and you can still type as you would before. So you can start typing it or you can find it. So yeah, a small but I think very useful little feature. And it's just one little component or script which can be modified for anywhere within Sage. And again, because they're all compliant with the Sage system, these fields behave like all others. So you can still drag them around and put them where you want. And you know, if you need to create essentially new entry lines, you can use the optional system to do that. Okay, so the next that I wish to look at and show you is inside AR, inside a customer. So I'll pick up the customers. So if I pick up any customer, what we've been able to achieve reasonably simply is to create a finder where there was none. So we're used to seeing finders throughout the system. So for instance, here's a group code, that's a core function, and you can use a finder there to select that. Well, here inside the state, which is a non-controlled field, is now controlled. So for instance, if I type something random in there, I get a message saying, no, this is not allowed. And I've got a finder here which will show me a list of states. So then I select one of those. So the finder behaves like a normal finder. It's not different. And so it's picking up standard Sage finder functionality. It's not being built freshly. So this is just an example. I don't know if people need to control their state, but you can see that there may be, especially something like a territory, may be important for customer entry, but it could also be anywhere in Sage. It might be vendors. It could be on header fields inside, say, an invoice. So on an invoice, you may wish that you could create a controlled field that's not an optional field. You can play with the optional fields as we just looked at, or you can in fact do this with the finders. So that's great. Okay, the actual finder itself is not very hard to add to as well. So if I just go to Extender, which is this suite of areas which you really don't look at much because this is where you set it up. But in here under the custom tables, which is where these grids are kept, if I look at the state table, you can see I've got these various codes already in here. So should I wish to add New Zealand to Australia, which was obviously in our original constitution, dear New Zealand, you're invited. Let's just assume they say yes, because it'd be such a good idea. Then we come back to my customer list, and on my finder, all else being equal, I now have New Zealand. So that's pretty much a very seamless sort of way to modify that. And you can use that, as I say, anywhere inside the system. Order entry is where I'm going to look next. I won't save my changes, and I may have, no, I haven't started that already. So under order entry, I'll look at a new concept, which is random pop-ups inside the system based on what your data is. So if I choose a customer here in, I'll make a new order with a customer, this pop-up, this is new. This is not something you would have had yesterday. This customer is in a red zone. Right, thanks very much for that. So what is this? This is a pop-up based on an optional field inside the customer. So this is just a standard option. And so the tool, Orchid, is looking whenever you invoke customer 1200, not just on this screen, but anywhere it could be, then you're able to pop up these messages. So it's just a minor note feature. You've got standard Sage notes, but this is far more precise in the sense that it's not associated with a persistent screen that you can't, you know, say when and when to turn off. This is controlled by the setup. So if I go back to customer 1200, you'll see that that under my optional fields, that's where it's being pulled from. So this optional field has just been referred to in the Orchid script, and when it finds any data in there, it will show it to you. Okay. And so, yeah, again, you can see possibly that maybe more for items with pricing considerations or packaging. Maybe they've got delays. You can use the pop-ups to confirm when, say, in the order entry as you create an item. Speaking of order entry, we'll now bounce into that. So I'm now going to show you adding some business logic onto Sage fields. So again, because we're essentially in a programming environment, we can say if this, then that. So we can actually do that sort of, if you like, Excel level logic. And so I'll pick up an item here. Here's one that we've just added a field to. All right, so in here, I'm going to order one of these things, and the price is normally $17. If I change the price to $8, so this is a sales process, and I move off of that line, I get a message, and the message is based on a calculation. The sales margin is only 1.88%, and there's a threshold of 10%. And depending on the structure of the rules, it will either disallow that or allow it. So this rule allows it but warns. If I change it to something a little more appropriate, then I don't get the message when I go to my next line. So again, $8, new line, or move off it, I get the message. That calculation is entirely based on whatever you've decided. So the idea here is that you can use the system to create pop-ups and rules. You can also do conditions such as if it's this, then do that. So you can create, if it's less than 10%, you can put a note here in the reference or add a new line on the field. It really is a box of Lego, and it just depends on what you're making today. But again, we don't expect the average finance team to have Python skills or to be invested in it. We can support that. But again, if you do have the wish to review and edit and add to these, you certainly can. They're not controlled and hidden. Another thing is that if I look at the opportunity to add buttons to the screen, so another feature. So in this screen, we've actually added a button which is not out of the box for Sage, but it's being created. As you can see, the button functionality looks and feels the same. And what this button does, this one's reasonably straightforward. It just adds a line for freight. That's all. Nothing smart about that particularly, except for that is a standard line I might need, and it's a shortcut. It could also add an amount into that field, but we haven't had that in here. And the amount could be calculated based on some information that's on this screen. So you can say if amount less than $100, freight is 20, else 0, which maybe do nothing. So those rules, again, you can manage yourself. Okay. So the next thing we can do is less visible, but quite useful, is create mandatory rules within the system. So if I post this order, I get a pop-up. No. PO number field must be filled in. Isn't it strange? A lot of rules are all about no. So the PO number is up here. This is not a mandatory field inside order entry, or it wasn't before we threw in a script to make it mandatory. So PO, this magnificent PO number, and now when I post it, it will allow it through. You'll also note that the PO itself has got a little star next to it, which is the new Sage mandatory indicator. And so that is sort of evidence that it's using standard Sage components to do this, because once that's been made mandatory, the Sage screen picks that up and puts the star there. So that's another great little moment. Okay, so the key, that's actually 7 minor points. None of them will set the world on fire. Some people may get excited by some of them, but the point, I think, is to show that we do have a box of Lego. We can make your Tonka truck, if you wish, look different, and ultimately it is available. It's supported through, it's all developed by Orchid, who are in Sydney, and MicroChannel, talking about us again, has a strong relationship with Orchid. We've worked with them for many years, and so this is a very strong, solid product, which certainly enhances the Sage experience. Now, back to me. Sage 300 tips. What I'll do is go through these 7 areas here. Some of them are very core and intrinsic to Sage, and you may well know them, but if you don't, it could well be of great assistance. Okay, so the first I wanted to look at was error batches. So this is very basic for core GL functionality. When we post a batch inside Sage and it has a problem, it creates this error batch. So the idea is, let's say there's a period locked, or the general ledger account has been made inactive. So these error batches are important because they contain the original information. The batch that they are sourced from tells you I've had an error, but it won't tell you where its parent was, but you can see it there. So this one came from a batch 210, for instance. So we can manage it here through the batch list. It's not too hard to work it out, and then you can go into that batch. It's a standard GL journal, and work out what's going wrong. The key, though, is that most people don't really know what's going wrong, and it's a bit hard to find. So there is an error report. Unlike in other modules in Sage, there isn't a line here saying error report, and you have to dig it out of the system, and it's buried here under posting journals. So the key point, I suppose, is that under errors, if you do it for all posting sequences, for instance, this is where Sage offers a little more friendly discussion on what went wrong. So it lists them all out, and you don't have to print everything, but essentially we can see that for all of these, it's a lock period. It's the easiest error to generate. I could have closed down some accounts, I suppose, made them inactive. So those errors will give you much more feedback on the error batches that you may see inside Sage. And I just find that some clients don't see that very often. They hunt and peck as to why the batch went wrong. Next is a general discussion, brief discussion on reconciliations. Now, obviously, those running mature Sage systems have got over this hurdle quite early, otherwise they'd be in strife. So essentially, the core I wish to look at is just some moments inside the Sage systems which help a little with getting those recs right. So first is that under the age payables report, so inside, for instance, accounts payable, if you look at cutoffs, well, I'll start with an age trial balance. If I'm in, I'm saying accounts receivable, accounts payable. So in the reporting inside the payables and receivables modules, this is the core report that will give us a balance. A key comment to make is that you can cut it off by period, which means that the year period then matches definitely to what the general ledger says. By doing that, this is really what the GL cares about for its balancing. If we cut it off by posting date, we're more likely to match the GL period, but not guaranteed, because it is allowed in Sage to mix the period and date, posting date. And again, with document date, even more so, because the document date may be one thing, the posting another, and the period a third. So most use of Sage, this isn't a daily issue because they're not changed, but should they be, this is sometimes come back to here and cut off by year period to give yourself the best chance of matching your general ledger. Another area which can catch is that if you're in the payables module, they're on hold. It's not relevant for receivables. You can see here that I can also make this report a full transaction history, but that's not relevant to reconciliations. Okay, so if I look at the same report over in payables, point that out. Again, by period, and this is what I'm saying on hold. Just because they're on hold, it doesn't affect their balances in the GL, so you still need to include that to get a proper reconciliation. Okay, the setup in the back end of Sage is important and normally set once and forget, but just to point out a couple of possibilities that can give us a bit of fun in the GL. Discounts sometimes are coded back into the control account, which will cause a problem because they are essentially trying to be, in this case, a negative expense. So be aware if that happened to be coded there, then there may be a system where that was done years ago. No one's ever used the discount. Now someone puts a discount through and suddenly your GL won't balance. So that can be the reason. Prepayments essentially are a sundry accounts payable creditor, if you like, and so of a negative sort. So you need to add that back if prepayments are used. Again, if they're sit dormant for years and someone pops in a prepayment, you won't balance unless you also bring this account in. In some ledgers, the prepayment account is matched back to the control account. Another note is just to do with control, so GL integration. All submodules have integration. We suggest the integration looks like this: create and posting a new batch, so that in the general ledger we automate the same entry that we saw in the subledger, and we don't let anyone come in and try to delete it or edit it. So it's just the least intervention required, and you can make it far more intervention. You can create the GL batches manually by pressing them yourself inside the subledger, but we recommend automate, and never consolidate. By the way, consolidation is like an anti-reconciliation function. If you ever were to see that consolidated, you get one lump in the GL account, which is the stuff of nightmares. So not recommended. Okay. Another note about Rex is that in the general ledger itself, the accounts that we use to manage our controls, so there's probably called something clever like trade creditors, accounts receivable, trade. Okay, so this looks like our control account, and yes, it is. See this tick here. So my comment is, if it's a control account, say so, and then when you do that, you get the subledger option here, and you can nominate which ledgers are allowed to post into this account. So example is that if I'm using accounts receivable control, I cannot code to it in a payables journal or invoice. It doesn't sound like you would, but it's just preventing the option or some sort of cash fee or some such. This GL line is slightly controversial. You might not allow the GL to directly post to it. However, if you're the accountant trying to reconcile a previous mess, you might need to put a journal in. It won't let you until you come back in here and either momentarily turn off control or add the GL account into here. So that's another minor tool which assists just to keep things on the straight and narrow when you're looking at the transactions themselves, preventing them coming in. An important reporting tool which is, I think, often underused in the GL. The GL, of course, has piles of transactions. So we see transaction listings. Show me the listing for the control account, and I'll look through there, seeing if there's anything odd in there. One way to do that look through without having to actually trawl through all the entries is to use a separate report called source journals. This can be set up as you wish, but what happens is that you can create as many of these profiles as you want. And so here, this one profile called GL journal entries. Okay, so if I look at GL journal entries only, that's only those entries from the GL. with JE as the type. And now, as I recall, that is not the account I want. Okay, well, let's go for a range of accounts. So I'm not really fussed. So I can choose a range of accounts or just one segment. So I can certainly pick and choose. That's the normal sort of account splits. An addition that this source journal report has is this ranges. You won't find this in most places in the GL. It allows you to pick by a period, which is fine. So look for a year. But it also allows you to pick by a single day. So I can pick a day, your birthday, and have a look for journals only on that single day, which is unusual in the general ledger, which is very period driven. Okay, so having chosen, notice some wide periods and wide days, I can also select posting sequences and so on, and even references. So if I have a specific reference, though I've never seen it used in anger, but there it is. And now what it's showing me is for that small range of accounts which I selected, which were more of sort of control accounts, but one of them isn't, allowance for doubtful accounts. Okay, and you can see these are journal entries. The source journal itself is selecting by this source code, JLJE. So that is the key selection. And you can have multiple different source codes selected in these journals. So for instance, I can make a journal which is called an invoice journal. And if I make this far larger, this will only pick up journals with these source codes. And so notice multiple source codes have been selected here. AR invoices, AR cash advances by the looks, and order entry invoices. And so there you can see that those source codes are being pulled up. Okay, so this is the source journal can be quite useful to give you a feeling for a whole range of different entries, but I see it as an interrogation tool. So again, we're in reconciliation land, what went on, and if you don't see what you like in the source journal area, you can create more of these profiles. So you can create them here. It's not difficult to put together, and you can have as many of these as you want with multiple source types. Okay, so I see that as quite a functional tool. Another sort of area is you go back into the sub-modules and you can look at transactions in there, and this might be laboring the obvious slightly, but if you look at AP transactions, so for instance, the GL transaction report, you can sort this by account. So it's just right in your face, but that makes a lot of sense because I can see what's been sent to the GL from AP and list it by account because I'm trying to reconcile my trade creditors, for instance. And that will help a lot because it's not just a great big list of invoices. Okay, so there's it's a bit of a potted list of areas to bear in mind to assist with reconciliations, and certainly those sort of tricks should be with your various account teams, payables, receivables. Just a shout out too, there is a tool made by a group called ToolPack, and that has a reconciliation screens which allow a automated matching between the transactions in a subledger and the transactions in the GL. Quite friendly. It's a simple subscription, not very expensive, so you can purchase it for a year. Let's say payables is giving you grief, and run it, and it will show a screen, and it shows in red those transactions that it doesn't correctly match between the two subledgers. So I find that can be quite handy when there is a little bit of fun and games inside your reconciliations. Okay, moving along. GL, the next thing I was going to look at briefly was GL security. In the GL, some have it on. If you haven't turned it on and been using your system for a while, you may not realize there's a security concept inside the options under General Ledger. So what does this do? By using GL security, we're able to set ranges of accounts and departments that certain users can and can't see. So I think that's quite useful. For instance, if you're in the payables coding area, let's not let you code to the wage accrual accounts or all of the balance sheet accounts except for maybe a few asset accounts. So you can do that, or you can have someone who's doing miscellaneous sales in AR, and they're not allowed to use any but their own department or own section. So you can do that using this GL security. It's a standard feature inside GL. How does it work? You go into the accounts area and we have this permission button pop up when you turn it on. Essentially, we set that previous screen to say, yes, everyone can have everything. That's the normal, my recommendation, because otherwise, essentially, you're turning the whole system off. But then you come in and start with those no's. It's all about no's. So no, you, Mr. Clark, cannot have 300. And you can obviously change that. So you cannot have 100 as well. You've got to be careful. We've only got a few choices. So that division will not show for this user anywhere in Sage, any screen where they get select a GL account. Over here, that's just segments. So all segments are available to us. That's the division segment. You might be in the region segment. Also accounts. So this is where I'm saying let's lock people out from ranges of, say, balance sheet accounts that are not their business. Because often that's not something you do see on a daily basis, people miscoding, but just remove the opportunity. And of course, it's a grid inside Sage, so you can have multiple ranges that you put in. It's not that we've only get one chance at this. So you can do single accounts or ranges. Okay, once you've done that, oh, I can't change it, that's fine. If I press test, that allows me to confirm what this user can see. It's just the finder with the permissions filter on. And as we can see, there will be no account below 3999, and look, so be it. And of course, there will be no segment 300, and that's the case. So yes, it works. Of course, it's core business. Okay, we've talked about screen customizations inside Extender. I just wanted to shout out to a standard feature, which is unfortunately only available to the administrator. So if you can log into Sage as the admin, you can do good stuff. You can hide screens, hide fields. You can hide screens by removing permission, but you can hide fields too. So for instance, if we look at this screen, it's quite busy. There's a lot on it. Maybe you don't want people to have, for instance, the create invoice tick, but you want some to have it and some not to. If you're admin only, you get this little button here, Customise. So Customise allows you to pick from a really messy list of all of the all the fields. Let me just pick a profile. So these are maybe just the salespeople. Okay, and we go down and we're looking for this create invoice. So this is a bit of a hunt and peck because it's in a random order of how it was built, I suppose, and it's got these terribly exciting field names. But we're just looking for that description. And notice it has a tick next to it. Tick means you can see it. Take the tick off and you can't see it. I'll do that again. It's like a little magic trick. See the word create invoice, keep your eye over there, and there it goes. When the user who has been applied to this profile, which is just done in the setup area of Sage, comes into order entry, they do not see that button. Now, I'd suggest that might be useful for a range of screens. So I've just chosen the order entry. It can also be useful because if you're keying quickly into Sage a lot, you're using the keyboard and using the tab key. And as you tab, it tabs through every available field. So to get down to the detail by tabs, that's about 12 tabs. If you hide a field, it's gone, and the tab order no longer visits it. So I can make this, if I only need 1, 2, 3 things, I can hide everything else, and it's just 3 tabs to get down to the next area. So again, minor functionality built in up here on the file menu. A quick shout out to multiple contacts, which is where I'm headed next. So multiple contacts allow us inside the system now to, it's been in there for a couple of versions, but just a quick note, multiple contacts is a central list of contacts, really cool people like me, and this allows us to maintain them once, assign quite a bit of information, including all their details, phone numbers and emails, optional fields and so on. So what? That's just a list. More importantly is that you can then assign those contacts to a customer or a vendor here in this screen. So with that, I can now add multiple contacts in, not just Carl and my customer service email. So now I can have multiple, all of these surprisingly have a very cool email, but because of my testing, it's annoying when you're actually sending the true emails out. I can create new from here. I can view the same detail I was looking at before. Importantly, I can say what these contacts do. So maybe they're not doing much but holding information, but if you do a purchase order, you want this email to get the PO, okay? And maybe this one, as you wish. So that's really the functionality inside the contacts is you set those, and then when you come to do this document, you just print to print destination. And so the print destination will respect the fact that you've set up multiple contacts as you're in there and send that PO to those people. So that's the short on multiple contacts. Again, customers, just to point that out, the same functionality, except for there are a lot more documents that we might want to send to customers, either in the order entry module or in the AR module. So statements, for example, you wish to send statements to multiple different addresses in a client. And there you have it. All you do is you run the normal statement run. There's no change on that screen. Use the customer print method, and then off they pop as emails to that address. So I think that's quite functional. And if you do see some use in it, you can use it as long as I think it's a 2020 version update. Okay, just quickly, don't want to take too long of your precious days, but customers, finders. So I'll use customers as my example. For those who I've worked with in the past, my apologies, you've definitely heard this. This is a well-worn mantra. Finders have a lot of functionality. Have a look in there. Look, we've even got colors. Okay, well, you can make things red and blue. But the functionality I wish to talk about is the couple which is under columns. So in columns, you can add columns, really quite useful. So for instance, see this balance due? The odds are that your customer list doesn't have it, mine does. Why? Because I went into columns once, I found the word balance due in this list, I included it, and then I pushed it up. So you need to push it around with these buttons. So you can find something like the territory code, may be quite useful to you because you're using that for salesperson management, okay, of customers. I've hit include, push it across, and now my territory code is somewhere, if we can just find it. There it is in my face. If I don't like it there, move it there. It'll remember it for me, for this finder, for this company. That's 3 layers deep. So unfortunately, there's possibly, if you run, let's say 3 companies and you're in a range of modules, you might be faced with 30 finders per company. So, but each one of them could be unique, which is great. So that's the first comment there. Another little note, see that there? That actually means something. Those are the nasty field names. When you're exporting Sage, you see those. When someone's trying to write a report, they love those. This go to filter first, it means when you open the finder, it pops into here, which is a great little feature. Set criteria. A common thought with the finders is it'd be really good if you had a double layer finder. Like I want to search on their name and their status. So I want Smiths, but I only want active Smiths. Okay, there are no Smiths, my God. Okay, but there are some S's. Okay, so if I'm only interested in active, so look at the word test in there is inactive. I don't want to show those, but I want to select on those names. You can use set criteria, surprisingly. Easy enough. In here's the list. Find the thing you care about, press add. It pops it into this grid, which is near infinite. You chuck in there what you care. So in this case, status, double click. I only want to see active. So what it's saying is status equals active. That's my new rule. Hit save, okay. And now all of the inactives are hidden, which is great. So now I've got a double level filter and I can come in here at any time, clear it all, or add more. So I can go, oh, and also I want their phone number to include something random, which would be an unusual one. Okay, so I will clear all because if I leave these on, then I'm looking for more inactives, so I'll never find them. Okay, just a quick shout out on finders. And reprint statements. My last little note, just for, again, those using the system on a regular basis in this area may well be aware. Transaction reports underneath, customer reports. I'm looking at statements. The statement screen allows you to create, a lot of good information based on the cutoffs that you put in here and using the data in the system at the moment. Once you've gone past, let's say it's a month later, you can rerun statements for old periods, but the data might have changed. You may have added new transactions from a month ago. Or more importantly, you may have printed this statement, and so now it's got a flag on it saying, don't reprint me. So lines can drop off. So statements change as we go forwards. So how do we get away from that? This little reprint button pops up a whole screen. So this, just to be confirming, is Sage keeps a total copy of all the data that it uses when it does a statement run, a total copy, so that it can recreate the data without actually having to store a photocopy, which is very useful, because if you just kept like a copy of the thing, like a photocopier, then you wouldn't be able to reprint it with a different form. Notice I can use a new sort of statement form if I have one. So I can reprint it in a different way, but with the same darn data, because the data is hidden. Now, in their infinite wisdom, Sage has not given us much of a hint as to where to find this big list, but there it is. Aha. The statement date. So you can see that we haven't run any statements in this sample company, but this is a list of all the statements that have been run. And you can pick a run and then rerun it and choose only one customer from that list or all customers. So the trick is that finder there, would you believe? Okay, so that reprint concept is, I think, well used, but maybe sometimes not alerted. It may be that the accounting team, most of them know about it, but someone or two don't, and they're the ones, unfortunately, running the statements now. That sort of information can get lost over time because it's mildly hidden. Okay, so that was the last in my points and tips that I wish to go through.